The Critical Drinker just said something really stupid. I know, it's a day ending in Y, but I want to talk about it this time, unlike usual.
Just when you thought it was all over, along comes a last-minute play to completely change the game.
The Warner Brothers Paramount deal is a gigantic situation. The entire entertainment industry is going to be significantly overhauled thanks to this. Paramount has spent over $110 billion to acquire Warner Brothers Discovery. That's almost $30 billion more than the original Netflix deal for Warner Brothers, roughly, for about a portion of Warner Brothers Discovery, as well as roughly $40 billion more than Disney paid to get 20th Century Fox a few years ago. This is a shit ton of money from a company not exactly known for pumping out hits like Disney has, especially recently.
It's Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, conservatively, the break-even point for this is $800 million.
That's so much money.
It's also been reported that it's closer to $1 billion. But this made $598 million, so just shy of 600. A Mission Impossible movie should be a success if it makes $600 million.
I know, right?
That's a given, right? But at number one, of course, we've got The Running Man.
Was it really?
Or it could be Mission Impossible. I don't know.
Okay, right.
So apparently it needed $275 million to break even. It made about 61.
This deal is absurdly expensive, and industry analysts have said their fair share about it. And the Drinker, well, he is a commentary guy who got famous for crying about Disney's Star Wars. So surely his insight into this massive business deal is, valuable? No, that's not the right word.
It seemed like only yesterday I was reporting on the sale of Warner Brothers to Netflix after an intense bidding war with Paramount in a $100 billion mega deal that seemed to signal a shift in the balance of power in Hollywood.
Drinker, I have to stop you there. You're off by about $18 billion for what Netflix offered. If Netflix's offer for a part of Warner Bros. Discovery was indeed $100 billion, it would actually be worth more to the company than Paramount's bigger deal, because Paramount wanted all of Warner Brothers, whereas Netflix just wanted its movie division. The Warner Brothers part. But that's understandable. I'm sure Drinker's audience doesn't care about, facts or anything like that.
The beginning of the end for both the studio system and the theatrical release model, as all the major players were slowly being gobbled up and absorbed into the streaming giants. But then Paramount took a look at the situation and decided...
Maybe so, sir. But not today.
And promptly upped their bid to a frankly ludicrous $111 billion, at which point Netflix decided, yeah, fuck that bro, we're out.
I won't beat around the bush here. Critical Drinker's video on the deal undercuts his own logic. Probably the whole logic of his channel, honestly. At every turn, he proves that he is not necessarily someone who should really talk about this topic. He doesn't understand the concepts of this deal because he frames it as the total destruction of the woke movement, that the message is being undercut, when in actuality, outside of CNN, yeah, not really. He demonstrates a lack of understanding of who he's supporting, as well as what this means for the industry as a whole. Now, I won't go over every single thing wrong with the video. For example, I'll probably not talk too much about how Drinker depicts the conversation that Donald Trump had with David Ellison, the co-founder of Skydance Studio and now co-owner of Paramount Skydance, and how he uses a lazy AI voice that is actually more articulate and verbose in terms of his vocabulary than the real Donald Trump is.
Hey Don, any chance you could lean on the FCC and get them to approve that Skydance merger for me? I sure would appreciate it, buddy.
I don't know about that, Dave. People might have questions.
Well, if you could make this happen, I'll fire everyone at CBS and replace them with people who only say nice things about you.
Consider it done.
Instead, what I want to focus on is how the Drinker celebrates this deal, as well as how what he's celebrating maybe just undercut the entire point of his YouTube career, at least as he sees it. I call him a grifter because I think he's a grifter, but he's always talked about himself as though he's a man fighting the studio system, opposing these systems of control. But in actuality, this video is him licking the boot, and it's a boot that has traveled through mud he doesn't seem to recognize.
But what the hell does this even mean for the future of filmmaking, theatrical releases, and the massive slate of IPs and divisions under the Warner Brothers umbrella? Because let's not mince words here, Paramount now control a pretty massive slice of the media landscape. Not just entertainment IPs, movies and TV shows, but news networks as well. What are they going to do with all this power and influence?
What we should first focus on is what Drinker's perspective on Paramount Skydance is as a company.
But what does it mean for the entertainment side of things, which is what we're really interested in here? Well, based on Ellison's previous work as a producer for Skydance, it's not difficult to see where his creative sensibilities lie. He's very much an action guy, with a heavy lean-in towards male-driven properties with traditional heroes, and how can I put this? I don't think he's exactly a big fan of the message. In fact, considering Paramount Plus is rapidly turning into the Taylor-Sheridan network, I think it's fair to say this guy sees Middle America for what it is, a potentially huge market that's been badly neglected in recent years, mostly by people who absolutely hate them. Imagine for a moment if there was a network that catered to their interests.
According to The Drinker, Paramount has become the world of Taylor Sheridan. And undeniably, Sheridan is a major figure in the world of media today. For those who don't know, Sheridan created the series Yellowstone and its various spin-offs. It should be, of course, noted that Yellowstone started in 2017, and Ellison didn't acquire Paramount until 2025, so acting like Ellison is accountable for any of Sheridan's successes is kinda stupid. But what are you gonna do? Yellowstone is a major institution in television for a reason. It's good. It does appeal to a demographic that has been underserved. It's a good show. You won't hear me criticize it because, yeah, it's good. But there's just one problem with Drinker talking about Sheridan as a main appeal of Paramount today. Sheridan is leaving Paramount. In fact, he announced he's leaving shortly after Skydance completely finished its acquisition of Paramount. He signed a deal with Universal Studios, and Sheridan's contract with Paramount ends now, actually. Ends March 2026. The television deal ends 2028, but that means the things he's already started will eventually come to a close, and he won't start a new project with Paramount until then. Now, what's funny is Ellison proclaimed that Sheridan's talents were one of the reasons why he wanted Paramount in the first place, and the moment he gets Paramount, Sheridan leaves for his major competition. I guess Peacock may finally rival Paramount Plus in terms of subscribers. So, Drinker praising Sheridan as the figurehead of Paramount, well, that aged just as well as spilt Irish cream, didn't it, Drinker?
And just like that, Paramount had pulled victory from the jaws of defeat, seeing off Netflix in an exercise of raw financial power.
Is Paramount acquiring Warner Brothers a feat of financial power? Is it them showing their strength? Well, no, actually. If anything, it's financial stupidity. The deal is putting Paramount into an absurd amount of debt.
On a call with analysts, Ellison said the combined company will have a net debt load of about $79 billion.
To give you perspective, the profits of both Warner Brothers and Paramount Skydance this past year combined will not be able to pay off the interest of the debt they're about to acquire. There is so much debt that Paramount has now put onto themselves, their stock has been devalued to junk stock, meaning it will be increasingly difficult for them to get loans. And they need loans to finance movies. They're a film production studio, but that means they often get financing from third parties. But also, the deal hasn't been signed yet, and they will need loans to complete said deal, which means, on top of everything else, they might not be able to get the funds to pay off the deal in the first place. They played around with money they didn't have and then made it harder to get the money to close the deal. If they can't close the deal, they owe Warner Brothers $7 billion. Just like they paid Netflix $2.8 billion for making sure their deal was voided. Which is probably why David Zaslav, the current head of Warner Brothers Discovery, seems so cavalier about the merger. He sold tons of shares of Warner Bros. Discovery stock right when Paramount's going to buy that stock for $31 a share, which is far higher than its current value. Seems kind of odd, doesn't it? Why would you sell your shares if you're going to get more money for all those shares from Paramount? Unless Zaslav believes that deal won't close. The reason why is because it's not a move for financial power at all. It's a move for desperation. CNBC did a study analyzing each studio's share of the domestic box office in 2025. As expected, Disney and Warner Brothers dominated, with Disney having 28% across its various studios and Warner Brothers having 21% of domestic box office. Right there, that's almost half. Universal/Focus had an additional 20%, which seems pretty substantial, doesn't it? Sony and Crunchyroll, bizarrely enough, had 7%. At the bottom, you had A24 with 3% and Lionsgate with 4%. Smack dab in the middle with 6%, Paramount. And by the way, that's prior to Ellison acquiring Paramount. Ellison is so small with Skydance Studios, he's counted in Other, which comprises of 6%, meaning his contribution to the domestic box office is remarkably minor. But don't worry, it gets worse for Ellison as we keep going. Ellison has only been successful so far thanks to recognizable IP, and many of his big IP are wearing down their welcome. Skydance started primarily with both Star Trek, the J.J. Abrams film specifically, and Mission Impossible, and it's primarily stayed there, with the big exception being Top Gun Maverick. They've produced many other shows as well and many other movies, but none as big as those, because they don't really make much money outside of their key IP and Top Gun. Like, yeah, Mission Impossible is successful, except for the most recent one.
It's Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Now, conservatively, the break-even point for this is $800 million.
That's so much money.
It's also been reported that it's closer to $1 billion. But this made $598 million, so just shy of 600. A Mission Impossible movie should be a success if it makes $600 million.
I know, right?
That's a given, right?
The most recent one went over budget and presumably lost a good deal of money because it didn't make a whole lot back. But it was the big grand finale as well, which means you can't trust Mission Impossible to keep pumping out films. That whole line is done. Tom Cruise is stepping back from it. But Ellison did produce Top Gun Maverick, which is one of the best action films in recent memory. Sure. Or rather, Tom Cruise made Top Gun Maverick. You see what I'm saying? Ellison just put his finances behind a recognizable IP from the 80s and let them go to work with the creative side of things. Most of Ellison's successes in the creative world are Tom Cruise vehicles. But despite Cruise being the man responsible for establishing safety protocols during COVID, you know, the very thing Trump made infinitely more difficult, Ellison owes Tom Cruise for Skydance's recent successes. Without Tom Cruise, they probably couldn't afford to buy Paramount as a company. And Paramount has struggled to make money under Ellison's current reign. Sure, it has TV stations, but most of that was reruns of stuff that already existed, of IP that predates Ellison. Is Ellison profiting off MTV? Bar Rescue reruns? All stuff that predates him. Paramount Plus remains a low-tier streamer compared to the rest of the stuff like Disney or even Warner Brothers. It's running on Yellowstone. The biggest prospects of this year for Paramount financially are the Angry Birds movie and Paw Patrol. I mean, I guess Street Fighter as well, or Scary Movie 6, but none of those are going to cross $1 billion, I assure you. Oh, and I guess Ellison was also accountable in part for the Transformers films. I mean, the ones no one likes anyway, not Transformers 1.
But what does it mean for the entertainment side of things, which is what we're really interested in here? Well, based on Ellison's previous work as a producer for Skydance, it's not difficult to see where his creative sensibilities lie. He's very much an action guy, with a heavy lean-in towards male-driven properties with traditional heroes, and how can I put this? I don't think he's exactly a big fan of The Message.
Let's address this point right here by Drinker. Does Ellison exclusively produce action films? No, he doesn't. Does Ellison refuse to make woke movies? Also no. And you know why I know that? Because it's something that I can tell Drinker didn't do because I can see what links he pushed on the screen. I actually went through Ellison's entire body of work. And let me tell you, Ellison doesn't really care about fighting The Message as much as you think. I noticed you only clicked on a few of those links right there. You fucked up by not clicking on the rest, I assure you. Yes, Ellison did produce Top Gun Maverick. He did produce Mission Impossible. He also produced Terminator Genesis, Dark Fate, and Zero. You know, The bad one, the controversial one, and the anime one. That was canceled after one season, apparently. Now, Drinker, what did you think about Dark Fate in particular? I recall you talking about it.
Terminator Dark Fate was pretty much exactly what I expected from the hilariously desperate trailers. A dull, disrespectful, lackluster, creatively bankrupt, and visually unimpressive attempt to simultaneously milk the classic movies for cheap nostalgia bucks, while also shitting all over them and using them as a springboard to launch a new, reinvigorated franchise with a cast of younger actors. What does this remind me of? Who in their right mind thought this was a good idea? What's a way to shit all over the events and sacrifices and triumphs of Terminator 2, basically undoing everything that happened in it? If this doesn't tell you the degree of respect this movie has for the rest of the franchise, then I don't know what will. So old Arnold agrees to help them, and generic teenage girl decides to put on her big girl pants and says she's done running, she's gonna stand and fight.
I'm done running. I'm gonna stand and fight. Yes, stand and fight.
And it made me physically squirm in my seat, because it's like watching a preschooler delivering the Gettysburg Address. I don't think he's exactly a big fan of the message.
So yeah, this is the guy you want to have fight the message? The guy who you said is an arbiter of the message? Interesting. I see. He also produced the adaptation of several sci-fi novels, such as Annihilation, which stars a team of women, some of them women of color, and some of them queer. There's Altered Carbon also, which is a good series on Netflix, which featured a protagonist who literally becomes a black man over the course of the series thanks to the whole brain-swapping cyberpunk aesthetic of the whole series. There's The Old Guard, the Netflix show that's basically gender-bent Highlander with a few gay characters thrown in as well. Really fighting the message there, huh, Ellison? He also produced Geostorm, Ghosted, and the animated film Luck, all three of which are runners-up for some of the worst films of the last decade, and none of them are testosterone-driven action films like Top Gun Maverick. But I mean, the Drinker never heard of any of these movies before, obviously, right?
And for every extraction, which offers simple, unpretentious action that turns out to be way better than it has any right to be, there's an Old Guard, which starts out with such promise, only to devolve into a boring, cheesy slog, ham-fistedly directed, poorly written, and basically amounting to 2 hours of pointless background noise. The movie centers on a group of mercenaries led by Andy, played by Charlize Theron. What the fuck is this weird trend of having female characters with male names? I mean, you're not breaking any glass ceilings with this one, you dicks. Annihilation never really caught on at the box office, but it was critically praised for its performances and casting and its thought-provoking story. Well, I can only assume these guys were thinking about a different movie, because the only thoughts I had when the credits rolled were, I really need to find a better place to bury those bodies. Whoa, sorry, I mean, why did I just waste 2 hours on this shite?
Odd how when you only look at a few films of a filmography, you get a very different message. He's also responsible for bringing the J.J. Abrams era of Star Trek to life, which means he is both responsible for canonically making Sulu gay, and for giving J.J. Abrams the clout necessary to make The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. Which means, in effect, Ellison is responsible indirectly for the creation of The Rise of Skywalker and The Last Jedi, which means without Ellison, Drinker would not have a career on YouTube. I guess that's why he loves Ellison so much. But I noticed you completely ignored most of Ellison's television shows, like say, Grace and Frankie, a TV show where two older women become friends after their husbands come out as gay and date each other. Or Dietland, a series where a plus-sized writer is recruited by a radical feminist organization. And you certainly are unaware that Ellison is adapting both Foundation and Neuromancer, two of the greatest sci-fi novels of all time, and choosing with his money to finance the expansion and fleshing out of roles for women in both. Interesting how that works out. The exact thing you're against, it sounds like. Hell, the women in Annihilation in the original novel aren't even given races or orientations. Hell, they don't even have names in the book, but all that was added in the film. In a very literal sense, they're given a race swap and orientation swap in the film. And you don't seem to realize that at all. It's interesting, isn't it? It just sounds to me like you saw Mission Impossible and Top Gun, and you just said, oh, that's all Ellison makes. I'm gonna stop there. Now, none of this really matters, because it doesn't mean Ellison is woke or not. Far from it. But one of the new projects that was released under his tenure as head of Paramount is Star Trek Starfleet Academy, a show you have rallied against its announcement, trying to turn it into the next Star Wars acolyte.
I mean, considering Ellison owns Paramount already, his first order of business should have been to nuke Kurtzman Trek from orbit, decanonize every show they've ever sharted out into the world, and have the entire secret hideout team forcibly escorted out of the building. Fuck it, you can just buy out their contracts if you have to. It's not like you're short on money, but whatever you do, just get those useless retards out of there.
What Drinker doesn't seem to get is that if Ellison really wanted to get rid of Kurtzman that badly, he could have by now. Hell, if that didn't stop freaking Zaslav from nuking Batgirl from orbit, that it was finished and completed. But Kurtzman not only is letting Starfleet Academy air, he's letting both seasons filmed before his arrival air. Odd, isn't it? He could have prevented it, he could have stopped it mid-production, yet he hasn't. And this, I think, is the biggest indication that the version of Ellison's filmography that Drinker wants to present isn't entirely accurate to the reality. Now, is Ellison responsible creatively for that show? No, but he's not creatively involved with any of the things he makes. The thing is, Ellison's not creatively involved with any of the shows he produces. He just pays money for them, and does a bad job marketing them historically. But let's move on.
But what about Warner Brothers' other IPs like Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, and the entire DCU? Well, I'd be lying if I said I was disappointed they weren't going to fall under Netflix's control. I mean, Jesus, could you even begin to imagine what a Netflix adaptation of Lord of the Rings would look like?
Now, I'd like to pause a second and stare at this disgusting AI image of blackface Lord of the Rings. If I have to look at it, that means you all have to look at it too. This is the level of humor we're dealing with right now, the level of maturity. AI blackface Lord of the Rings, something no one has ever proposed, and yet he thinks Warner Brothers was going to do it. Let me just let that sink in. Drinker genuinely thinks his audience will believe this will actually exist. Yes, no, it's a joke, but he had to type into ChatGPT or Grok, whatever he uses, make Lord of the Rings black. He has put more effort into this than Warner Brothers has ever put into making anything diverse, ever. Okay, we're done looking.
Wouldn't get too comfortable in that Warner Brothers office if I were you, James.
Drinker clearly thinks this deal will result in everyone he doesn't like going away, like James Gunn. And while it's possible Gunn might just leave like Sheridan did when the merger completes, the reality is Ellison wants Gunn to stay. Because like Sheridan, Ellison realizes Gunn is a massive talent who gets results financially, and most importantly, always makes his films under budget. Because Ellison will need films to come in under budget if he hopes to crawl out from under the mountain of debt he's accumulating. For all of Ellison's conservative actions, he is letting South Park and The Daily Show do what they want. Because it makes money. Ellison realizes Trump isn't going to be president for very long. He wants to make sure his media empire lasts longer, and businessmen are nothing if not cynical. Recent Star Trek productions are designed not necessarily to approach the woke, but to draw in new audiences because Star Trek's fandom is aging. The reason Starfleet Academy looks the way it does is to attract a younger audience who can then become fans for longer. That is the methodology they're employing. Nothing about Starfleet Academy should feel like an uncalculated risk by the people behind it, which does include Ellison now. They have to diversify their portfolio to draw in the biggest audience. You don't do that with the same shit every time. Yeah, Yellowstone did address a need that was apparent, but the reason Paramount Plus is struggling, because it doesn't diversify. There's not 5 or 10 different shows for different demographics it needs, and it needs that 4-quadrant entertainment that Disney and Warner Brothers has excelled at. That's why they're buying Warner Brothers. But there is one aspect of Warner Brothers Discovery that will be immediately devalued, and that is CNN, which honestly already has been devalued thanks to Zaslav. But the real cost of Ellison's takeover is financial and industrial. Ellison plans on cutting $6 billion of cost from the company that he creates, which means shutting stuff down. That means you're going to lose media and not get anything to replace it. That means cutting down on experimental projects, lowering budgets, making special effects look worse. That means fewer risks. If you look at Ellison's body of work, all of them are fairly generic and fairly safe. Some of the more interesting projects, like World War Z, are essentially underwhelming adaptations of very interesting works of fiction. And I think even Drinker knows this, but he completely buries that element at the end of his video.
That being said, I'm not going to pretend that this is an ideal outcome by any stretch, and I don't particularly love the idea of independent studios merging together into homogenous mega corporations, because let's be honest, it's bad for competition and bad for creativity. But, on the other hand, if ever there was a definitive signal that the age of identity politics and the message has come to an end in Hollywood, I think this just might be it. The great experiment that's decimated pop culture for the past decade is well and truly over. Good fucking riddance. The only question now is, when can the age of rebuilding begin?
Drinker sees it as a necessary evil to stop the woke if it means studios are merged and bought out and productions are halted and all that good stuff. Of course, the problem here becomes that I think Drinker is ignoring box office. After all, one of the most financially successful films this year was Sinners, a film that is unapologetically about racial discrimination. Another film, Superman. And Superman cost much less money than Mission Impossible, but grossed more than Mission Impossible. For that matter, everything Skydance did got overshadowed by Demon Slayer, an anime filled with badass ladies. I don't think that Ellison's anti-woke policies will compare when you have a diverse cast of characters as one of the biggest hits of the year. So let me ask you again here, Drinker. Is anything actually shifting? Or is Ellison just going to stand back and let the people who know what they're doing make films people want to see? And Paramount has a blacklist of actors who are not politically aligned with them, like, say, Melissa Barrera. But it almost doesn't matter because they'll be making less shows and movies, and so their blacklist will have less pull because they're making less stuff. And you know where those actors go? The competition, Universal, Disney, who will be making that stuff. Basically, Drinker is celebrating the death of media because it will own the libs.
Now, as you can probably surmise, the prospect of a multi-billionaire with conservative leanings merging two of the biggest studios in Hollywood together under his personal control went down about as well as expected with the usual crowds. Oh dear, it's a bit scary when you don't have an absolute stranglehold on modern culture and have to compete with other creatives that don't share your particular worldview, isn't it? Pass me the world's smallest violin, will you?
He gets to say, oh, the woke people are mad, but what do you get out of it? You get less media. The Drinker has always presented himself as an anti-establishment kind of guy. He's a normal person looking in at the industry and going, this is bad and I want this instead. That's the veneer he puts on anyway. I think it's bullshit, but that's what he puts on. The truth is, all he sees is a game. You know, you would know about all the stuff that Paramount does if you watched anything other than an action film. If your mom watched Netflix, she's probably seen Grace and Frankie, whoever it is. But the problem is you don't, because you're focusing just on the main big blockbuster films and not the rest of the catalog, which paints a much more interesting picture. Because a film studio is more than just their biggest hits, it's the full portrait. Ellison is ultimately a businessman, and it sounds like not a very smart one. Many of his biggest successes have not been all that successful because of him, but because of creative drivers and veterans in the industry. What happens when you blacklist so many and alienate so many that you have less people coming to your projects with potential? What happens when you cut costs from different studios, different television stations that have made your studio what it is? A slump in the industry, less projects, less risks, more boring stuff. And if Ellison is your guy, a guy who made Terminator Dark Fate, the very thing that you presented as a sign of the message entirely, and you argue that's what we want moving forward, But no, Drinker tells you, Paramount's gonna fight Disney. Look at what Disney's putting out, like Predator Badlands, a movie that the Drinker hated, but general audiences seem to really like. What's Paramount gonna bring forward? Terminator Genesis? The bad Transformers movies? Is this really the best shit you got, Ellison? Oh no, they're gonna bring out Star Trek with Section 31. Yeah, this is the guy who the Drinker is telling you is going to save us from the message. You have truly cooked your own audience, gone against your own interests, and lied to everyone about who you really are. But then again, any of us keeping track could have told everyone already you were nothing more than a liar from the moment you started opening your mouth. So please, celebrate this deal. Celebrate people losing their jobs. Celebrate families who would have to take out a second mortgage on their homes to feed their families. Because most of the people who are suffering are the multitudes of people who rely on consistent television work, consistent thankless work to feed their families and keep people alive. Celebrate the writing rooms shrinking down. Celebrate these special effects guys losing their jobs. You want to point to the big name actors you recognize because you don't know the other names, but you ignore the names and the credits of people who make your films possible. You're celebrating the suffering of the little guys. The people who you are supposedly appealing to. You are celebrating them suffering. And above all else, that's the most egregious thing, isn't it? Because you're not just celebrating, oh, Mark Ruffalo won't get a job from a company he's not working for anyway. You're celebrating the FX crews, the overworked guys. Supposedly you're on their side, right? Well, guess you showed them, huh?
Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.